Now, rather fittingly, it was shortly after watching the final episode of the third season of The Witcher over the weekend that I heard or saw what the executive producer of the show, Polish-born Tomek Baginski, said to a local Polish news outlet about why they apparently had to deviate from the books and essentially dumb down the story so much. And translated from Polish, what he said was, "When a series is made for a huge mass of viewers with different experiences from different parts of the world, and a large part of them are Americans, these simplifications not only make sense, they are necessary. It's painful for us, and for me too, but the higher level of nuance and complexity will have a smaller range. It won't reach people. Sometimes it may go too far, but we have to make these decisions and accept them." Okay, and considering a good percentage of my viewers are, like myself, apparently rather simple-minded Americans, my plain speak translation of that is him saying, our show sucked not because we just made a bad show, but because our viewers are idiots and we had to make it that way, and that under other circumstances we totally could have made it better if we wanted to. And I've got to assume that somehow in the age of the internet, he either didn't think or realize these comments that he made to, again, a Polish news outlet would go beyond that and make their way over to the US. Or maybe he did realize that and just didn't care because he's upset and is kind of lashing out about the relatively low viewership for Season 3 of The Witcher on Netflix, that it's way down from Season 2. And I'd wager those ratings will get even worse next season, considering this was the last one with Henry Cavill playing the titular character, and for many he's one of the main reasons, if not the only reason in some cases, why they have watched it this long. Anyway, in this same interview, after him saying that we resigned from cause and effect chains, from a linear narration, this book-like narration, when it comes to shows, the younger the public is, the logic of the plot is less significant, he was asked by the interviewer what is significant then, and responded, just emotions, just pure emotions, a bare emotional mix. Those people grew up on TikTok and YouTube, they jump from video to video. Alright, and what he says here makes absolutely no logical sense, because he's basically saying that since the audience, especially younger members of it, since they don't have a big enough attention span, certainly not big enough to string together how events could relate to and be relevant to each other from one episode to the next, much less one season to the next, because of that, they don't worry about things like the consistency of the plot because their audience isn't going to understand it anyway. Not to mention they only apparently care about big emotional moments that they get a lot out of even though they don't understand the context around them. But the big problem with that is, even if we assume that's true of the audience, that a lot of them can't get it, there will still be plenty of viewers out there who can get it, who will understand a complex story, and will crave one, who will enjoy it and appreciate it even. And I do indeed think there are a lot of them. I think Game of Thrones, being one of the most beloved and watched shows of all time, is proof enough of that. I fail to believe that so many people watched 8 seasons of that show and had virtually no idea what was going on the whole time. I can't believe anything close to a majority of viewers liked it just because every so often, when they were done with all that talking, cool things happened. That again are mainly only cool because of the context or intricacy of the story around them. Also keep in mind just how many people were upset during the later seasons of the show, especially Season 8, when the quality of the writing went downhill and the characters started to do illogical things. I mean, if most people hadn't really understood what was going on the whole time, how would they be able to recognize a change or decline in the consistency of the writing? Shouldn't they just still care about those big emotional moments? So anyway, if many of the viewers aren't watching for the plot or won't get it, while at least some others are watching for that very reason, while there are those out there who will get and enjoy it for sure, well then, looking at it kind of logically from their perspective, wouldn't trying to appeal to the most people possible in order to increase viewership be your goal? Which would then mean there's no reason not to go complex and nuanced with the story, right? Because the people who are just watching for those emotional moments and don't care about or get the story will still be happy because those moments will or should still exist. And to them, whether or not a good nuanced plot is present or not is kind of irrelevant because they don't or can't or won't notice the plot anyway. So it shouldn't make a difference if there is a good or intricate plot or not. Either way, it should be roughly the same experience for the stupid viewer, if you will. Though maybe, just maybe, if the story is good and interesting, and even if it's highly nuanced, they'll somehow manage to pay more attention, because it's good and interesting, and thus they'll follow along better and get a lot more out of the show. Maybe if the show didn't treat them like idiots in the first place, they'd put the phone down and spend less time watching TikTok and more time on long-form storytelling. Basically what I'm saying here is, by their own argument again, there's no reason not to make the plot complex and intricate, or to at the very least make it coherent and consistent, even if you believe the majority of your audience to be a little more than idiots who watch it for reasons. I really don't understand watching for, as he says, these pure emotions or for the bare emotional mix. Because it's not only hard to have an emotional reaction to something when you don't understand or care about the story around the characters, but you're also telling me they can only watch minute-long TikTok videos but will watch an hour-long show for a handful, at most, of these emotional moments. Now, all that said, I have seen a few people who have reacted to these comments by saying something to the effect of, well, he's not entirely wrong, is he? He's not wrong when he said in the same interview that it's time to be serious. Dear children, what you do to yourself makes you less resilient for longer content, for long and complicated chains of cause and effect. And though I certainly think that an argument could be made, or at the very least a discussion should be had about the impact of TikTok or social media in general on the minds of young people today, anyway, setting that aside, I certainly wouldn't say that my generation growing up, which was completely devoid of the internet, was in any way, I guess you could say, trained for long-form storytelling. Pretty much every show I grew up with as a kid, even something like, say, Star Trek The Next Generation, was very episodic in nature. Most of the shows I watched, at best, had a loose, overarching story, and instead were more, shall we say, premise-based. You could miss a few episodes of a show and jump right back in, having missed essentially nothing. Nevertheless, some of us back then sought out long-form storytelling without exactly realizing we were doing that. I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy novels, or series of novels, starting in my early teens. Heir to the Empire, for example, came out when I was 13, and it rekindled my obsession with Star Wars and helped turn me into someone who still loves to read a good book to this very day. And sure, you could absolutely argue that I only found books in my teen years because I didn't have a smartphone in my pocket with TikTok on it to sit down and veg out to for hours on end, that if I grew up nowadays, I may never have found a passion for reading and stories in general, which is then why I'd argue it's all the more important for shows today, such as The Witcher, which will attract in younger viewers because it does indeed look cool. But it's more important than ever to tell great stories to get this generation interested in actual stories and storytelling, instead of watching someone do the latest trend for a minute on TikTok before watching someone else do it and someone else do it, and, well, you get my point. I mean, this guy is basically upset that kids won't watch or get into good stories, and then refuses to give them good stories to watch and get into. Even though my generation, who again grew up with a lot of mindless TV in the 80s and 90s, are now loving shows like the aforementioned Game of Thrones and the complexity of something like Breaking Bad. And so if you really want to beat TikTok and the like, if you want to save this generation from mindless content and get them hooked on good long-form stories, maybe instead of emulating the problem, simply present a better option for the generation to get into. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about this one. Do you agree that younger viewers just don't care or don't get it when it comes to entertainment? Do they only want an emotional payoff? Or did he just fail to produce a good show and is looking for someone to blame? Whatever you think, leave those comments below and let's talk some Witcher. And until next time, thanks for watching.